Hello, everybody. Hi, I'm Mari.
And I'm Sandy.
We are here today to host the Idiots Don't Catch Codes live Q&A. Okay, what? Okay. So, don't worry, you're not being trolled. Okay, this is the right place for you to be. Aina is going to be here. You won't have to bear with only us. Okay. But before we start, we are going to give you some information and set up a couple of rules with you so that our life can like be respectful and flow well. Okay. So to start, I like to say that the other questions for the live were pre-selected by me and Sandy with Ina's approval, okay? And so you don't think we didn't think about what you want to see being answered. We had a really extensive research, like on Discord and on the platforms on Discord and on Band and on Tapas, Webtoon, Patreon, and we're very active on the fandom. So we kind of know what people are talking about the most. So everything that you've been asking in all these platforms is probably going to be here in one of the questions, okay? But if not, we'll have some time in the end where Aina will answer a couple of questions from the chat. So when we open for it, you can leave your questions there and we select some that we haven't answered yet. Okay. So Sandy, do you want to go over the rules?
For sure. Um, okay, so just so everyone is aware, sorry, I did have some issues with my mic there, so I hope we don't hear the feedback. Um, we do have Victoria behind scenes here who's helping us with our technology and the streaming and the watching the chat. We could not do this without her. Some of you know her as SOS from Band and Discord. She's an amazing artist, and recently on Discord won the Soda's birthday event. So, and I noticed in the chat a lot of you weren't aware of the Discord, so definitely we would love to see you on there. Um, Before we introduce Aina, we do want to set some rules. So for for the $3 tier, you may end up getting some spoilers from the $5 tier during the live. We do ask that there's no offensive comments, and it, it's strictly forbidden to ask Aina personal questions that aren't related to the comic or her history as an artist. Um, we also ask that you don't share the link outside for non-Patreons. That would be disrespectful to Aina as well.
Yeah. And
And
just before,
then,
oh, sorry.
nope, that's it. Sorry, go ahead.
And then just before we call her, just so you know who we are really quickly, because we are strangers for most of people here. I'm Mari. I go by Mari in all the platforms really. And I've been reading Idiots Don't Catch Codes nearly for 2 years. I'm really a baby yet in the community. Considering the comic has like six, no, 7 or 8 years now. So I fell in love with it, became really obsessed with it, and now my obsession has turned into writing a lot of fanfics and being a moderator on Discord. And I don't know, I just think about the comic every day, really, because I'm very involved in the community, and I'm very happy to be here today.
Yeah, for myself as well. I go by Sandy Shar, and you'll find me on the Discord. Again, I'm a moderator as well. And you'll find me on AO3 with and Band with the same name. I do write a lot of fanfics as well. Um, some of them a little bit more intense than others recently. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I've really become a little bit obsessed with this, with idiots don't catch colds as well. So, but it's really brought me and Mary and other people closer together. So I really enjoy it, and I hope that you guys are enjoying it too, and that we can answer some of your questions today.
yeah. We are all really glad that you're here today with us. And now let's call her the woman of the hour. She's Swedish German and she lives in Swedish. Um, Currently, she's a storyteller, an artist, and she gave life to a very beloved comic that has moved us for so long now. And we want to welcome her, Aina Palm.
All right. Hello. Am I live now? I think so. I
I
hope
think you
so.
are.
All right. Good.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah,
Thank you so
there we
much
go.
for that. All right. All right. Are we good? Good. Thank you so much for that warm welcome. And I just want to, first of all, say a very big thank you in general to you, Mari, Sandy, and Vitória for setting this all up. Like, really, really cool initiative. And yeah, I'm excited to do this today.
Was a bit of a selfish initiative because we really were longing for so many questions to be answered. So we are really happy you were up for it too with us. Just before we start, I want to say, I forgot to say, I'm Brazilian, so English is not my first language. So I'm sorry if I make any mistakes. I hope you can all understand me well. Okay. Um, but okay, let's start with the questions because we have a lot to go through. Um,
Definitely.
we are going to start with some questions about Aina's story as an artist, her personal inspirations. So Aina, to start, how did your journey start? Like with the Japanese productions, animes, mangas? How did you get inspired from them to create a webcomic?
Well, my journey started as it did for any kid born in the 90s with like Pokemon and Sailor Moon.
Yeah,
But back then I didn't even know that it was like Japanese or that there was a name for it. It was just these cool shows that I enjoyed. So I think it was just later that I even discovered that it was a whole thing. But I don't know, like I've heard from other artists that it was always a lifelong dream to become a comic artist. But for me, that was not the case as a teenager. Like I didn't think that was ever gonna be an option for me. Like yeah, for anyone who's not Japanese. So it took quite a while until I actually got to the point where I thought, hey, I'm gonna try to make like a manga or I guess a web comic. And that's almost like a story in itself. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We could see like I think it was in your last Q&A that you used to like make some doodles and like drawings on your notebooks, and you always like the Japanese culture, like we can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for second question, Sandy.
Oh, okay. So I okay. So obviously, as you were talking there, you started drawing in school and didn't have any education in the arts. Since you started your comic, have you remained self-taught, or have you felt the need to study any part of like the comic making process?
Formally.
Hmm.
You mean like at a school or online classes, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought of it. I have problem with like perspective, and I'm getting by with 3D models and so on. For it is to catch cold, I think I'm mostly good. I feel like I've learned how to get by difficult parts that I'm not very good at. It would be cool to do a course on how to draw creatures like monsters and stuff like that, and also get better at drawing backgrounds with nature, because I think that's something where 3D models will not necessarily help you get the effect you want, but that would be more relevant for future projects rather than edit on catch colds. And I don't think like they have that much availability for classes here in Stockholm for the kind of like for the specific kind of art that I would like to learn. So maybe I would enroll in something online. But one of the big issues I have is just time. I'm always chasing that deadline, and it's hard to kind of put that time aside to do something like that. But hopeful in the future, yeah. Unless I just cheat myself through it like I've done so far.
Something
But
wrong
your
with that.
self-teaching is really amazing. So you
Thank you.
have
I would say
really,
that
really good
there's
artists.
Yes, sorry. I was just going to say,
Yeah.
like, there's so many resources online also that are for free. So I
Yeah.
have looked those up, like, but those are like maybe quick tutorials on Tumblr or whatever, where they just point out a few things to think about when it comes to anatomy. And so for me, teaching myself is mostly just copying what I see and trying to emulate that in some way.
Yeah. And talking a little more about the inspiration you have had throughout your life. Um, you already talked about being fans of many productions. like Japanese productions. What you already talked also that you like Pokemon and Sailor Moon, but are there any that currently inspire you, like new productions that you're enjoying? Like, can you tell us more about your taste in mangas and web comics and comics and animes?
Yeah, I've gotten so picky over the years. It's awful. I get so jealous when some of my friends get really immersed in a story because I used to have that when I was a teenager. And then I kind of fell off the wagon with that. I think lately, if it counts as a new production, Attack on Titan, it started so long ago, but the last season was aired like last year, I think. And that's a comic, or like rather anime, that I've been the most into in my adult years, I would say. And I'm rewatching it right now while working. But otherwise, I like the Dungeon Meshi. That's on Netflix. That's really cute. But otherwise, I don't know. I would say it's mostly Attack on Titan that's piqued my
Yeah.
interest.
Are
Yeah.
you more of a reader? Like you enjoy more mangas or animes?
Lately, it's more anime, actually. I think like when it comes to reading, I will sometimes go into Webtoon and check out what people do. But I think in general, I kind of like anime just because it's just one reason is also just I don't have to scroll with my hand,
Yeah.
which makes me sound incredibly lazy that I can't even do that. But I think it's just because I use my hands so much for writing and drawing that I try to like get a break from that, like
Yeah.
this micro movement, because it does strain your hand after a while. And with anime, I can just relax and eat or whatever I want to do.
No,
In the
that's
meanwhile.
totally fair. We wouldn't want your hand to get injured because we
Yeah.
need it very much.
We
Yeah.
need it.
We need it, yeah.
Mm.
Do you want to jump to your next question there, Mary?
Okay, I can do that. Regarding the beginning of Idiots Don't Catch Codes, um, I believe I have found your Tumblr, your old Tumblr, to be honest. And it's, I could see you already drew Yuri on Ice, especially like some mini comics for it. And I wonder what it was like start sharing your art with the world and then start um, publishing a webcomic. Like, what was your feeling and your first thought when you published the very first episode of IDCC also?
Mm. Yeah, for me, art has always, like, for the longest time, was a very private thing for me. Or, well, private. I would draw like big manga figures on my school desk for everyone to see, so maybe not that private. But more in the sense of no one was into anime and manga around me, except my sister. But in school, it was just a very niche thing. And when I drew, people did not care too much, which was fine by me because it was just something I did when I was bored. And I always knew like, oh, I'm okay at drawing compared to my classmates who don't draw, so no real competition. But when I went online and saw what people would be illustrating, I knew that I hadn't much to like offer in that sense. I remember also posting a picture I drew of Gaara from Naruto on DeviantArt, and it barely got any views. And that was fine. It wasn't like a big deal for me. But then I remember posting a first drawing onto Tumblr and thinking it would be like DeviantArt, maybe get like 12 views or something. But then I woke up the next day and it had 500 notes, which for me
Wow.
was a very big thing because I had zero expectations and I had never had an audience for my art. Like even when I started getting friends who were into anime and manga, like as a 14-year-old or whatever, then we were not talking about art or anything like that. And it was just very cool because I feel like the first things I posted to Tumblr were very niche, even like, and it was cool to find my crowd. And I think back then Tumblr had an algorithm, not sure about now, but like at least then that it was kind of easy to get your art out there. And just having like the first drawing that I did make some rounds at least, made me think, cool, I'll just draw a little bit more then. And that's when the first time I posted a mini comic, just a few panels of that character, and that got even more notes. And that just, I don't know, that became kind of a new hobby for me. Before that, I had been cosplaying, but what I didn't really like about cosplaying is that I felt so dependent on other people, group cosplay and stuff like that. And I was never a good at sewing or anything like that. But with this art thing, I could do it on my own and still find a community. And so I just got more and more into Tumblr. And that's the first time I think that I took my art more seriously. Because before that, I would just mostly doodle heads in my calendar and hide the hands, not draw any backgrounds. But then when I started posting on Tumblr and had an audience, then I couldn't just get away with not drawing hands, right? And that's when I first started looking up more tutorials a little bit, just basic things, how to draw anatomy and so on. And I just discovered how much fun I had with it. But the thing is that by that time, I was not as much into anime and manga anymore. And I did feel like, oh, I don't, in order to make these mini comics, because that's what people were following me for. Not so much because my art was amazing, but rather I had like fun little jokes in my mini comics. And I felt that I enjoyed it, but I didn't want to have to rely on other shows anymore. I didn't want to force myself to watch whatever was popular at the time in order to draw a comic. I really wanted to do something of my own where people follow me for my original stories, because that's also what I got more into it. Like even the Euro and Ice comic that I did back then on Tumblr, that was like an alternative universe where a Victor pretends to be an amateur at ice skating so he can get closer to Yuri, which has not much. Yeah, I like it. I think it is a cute idea, and it doesn't have much to do with Euro and Ice really. I borrowed the character, but the idea behind it was just like, it's an alternative storyline, right? And that's what I enjoyed the most, just creating something on my own. And I wanted to do it not just borrowing characters, but with my own characters. And that's how I started thinking of making Idiots Don't Catch Colds. And posting the first episode was, I was very nervous because I think I spent like a year or so planning and drawing the comic, so I would have a buffer. And also at first, Idiots Don't Catch Colds was created for a competition on another webcomic site called Listen. And for that contest, you had to finish 5 chapters, if I remember correctly, to enter into that contest, which is insane compared to like Webtoon, where they're like, oh yeah, do like 3 episodes or whatever. I didn't win the contest, needless to say, but then I had something to post on to Webtoon. And I think that if you spend so much time working on something, of course, it's gonna be quite nerve-wracking to anticipate people's reactions and so on.
Totally. Yeah, and even if you didn't win the contest, I mean, I think you have won so much more, maybe, than that, right? Because it really is a story that, I don't know, I always see people saying how much it changed their lives, or it helped them through really hard times, or offer a piece of comfort for everyone who reads it. So we are very glad you came up with it and started posting.
Yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you.
Very happy that you shared it, even if, test, because we wouldn't be here today
Yeah.
having these heart attacks every week. So when you first began then with the, posting Idiots Don't Catch Colds, you said that you started to take a look at like actually learning other things such as autonomy and like drawing the hands and stuff. What did you find was the hardest thing that you really had to kind of get down, that you think that when you first started?
Art-wise, you mean?
Yeah, art-wise, yeah.
Yeah. I think, that's a good question. I think by that time I had gotten so much practice through my stupid comics on Tumblr that I felt like somewhat confident in doing it. I think what I struggled the most with is just drawing rooms and buildings freehand. Now thank God I have my sister who's able to do 3D models on commission for me, because I think especially in the first chapter, is that that second chapter? I don't know, when Sota is called to the principal's office, not principal's office, what I'm talking about, the teacher's lounge, when he's talking to his teacher, that one, it looks very wonky when he stands in front of that teacher's desk. That's obviously something where I didn't use a 3D model and I just winged it, and it looks so bad. But I guess that would be the most difficult for me to draw. but I think that because especially Clip Studio also has so many 3D models, I think that that's something I was able to resolve quite quickly. Also with SketchUp, where I was able to build stuff myself. Yeah, but otherwise, I don't know. I think, yeah, I kind of figured out how to do most things in a somewhat okay level back then. What I
What
thought
about
was okay
now?
back then. Now,
What
what
about
was
now? Is there
difficult?
something you
What's
think
something you're
is
working
more
on like
difficult?
right now that you
Uh,
hope
I
to get
think
better at?
I think that what I find very difficult to draw, which I didn't have to struggle with in the beginning, is how to draw characters interacting. Like a hug is challenging for me to draw. And then I try to find references and so on, because normally if I don't know how to draw something like a pose, I can just take a picture of myself and use that as a reference. Or like even with my hands, you know, like if there's something very difficult, I can take a picture and just follow it. But hugging, that's kind of like if you don't find a reference pic on Google that is exactly kind of the pose and the angle you want, then because even 3D models, like in Clip Studio, they have those 3D people that you can pose, but they are very stiff. And getting them
Yeah.
to hug each other in a natural way is just kind of impossible. So I don't really want to use them for that. And I think that I think when I draw NSFW, because I am planning on doing it at some point, that's going to be very interesting. I've never drawn that
Challenging, yeah.
before. That's
Yeah.
going to be definitely, with limbs and sort of tangled,
The
a
anatomy
challenge.
is way more complex.
Yeah.
We're waiting
Yeah.
though. We're waiting for that. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
remember the panel when Sota and Now hug, like that Sota throws himself and Now when
Mm.
he now goes to Sota's house. One thing that caught my attention the most was like Now clutching like his hands in Sota's shirt. And I don't know, it looked so intense. I would never say you struggle with that because it
Thank
was
you.
one of the most intense imageries I think made me feel the most in the comic. You know, it was
Thank
really,
you.
really emotional for me.
Oh, that makes me happy. I struggle with that, but I never wanted to get it down in a way that looks like I wish even now that it had more weight to it, but I'm still happy with how it turned out. But also a fun fact for like when I drew Now hugging his mother when he's a child after like he burned like like her shirt or whatever it was when ironing. I had to have like a reference for that, and I just found my aunt's old teddy bear, like that is really big. So to get the reference, I just like took a picture of me hugging that teddy bear, and then tried to wing it like okay, because that was a very interesting experience as well. But you find your little tricks as an artist, I
Yeah.
guess.
And what's the easiest thing for you to draw nowadays?
Easiest. I think easiest is probably when it is a little bit zoomed out and I can get away with using the 3D model, guys, because then I can even just do line art directly onto like the 3D dolls. Like I think it's no, I think that is the one that is the quickest nowadays.
And you're an independent web comic artist, and we would like to know more about what's the most rewarding about it, the most rewarding things about it, and the most challenging things as well, because I think being independent in anything really is very difficult, like finding people to support you and to build that community that likes what you
Mm.
do. It's not very easy. So how do you feel it? How has it been for you?
I think the most positive thing about being independent is that I have a lot of freedom. And I'm able to test out different sites and different kind of opportunities. And of course, it's a little bit difficult to compare because I've never had a contract with Webtoon or anything like that. And I have talked to other artists where like some seem to have a good experience, others seem to be a bit more skeptical. And lately there have been more and more people coming out criticizing specific websites
Yeah.
contracts. Not sure if, yeah. Um, And I don't want to say too much about it because at the end of the day, I don't know. I've never seen the contract myself. But yeah, I think it is good to have like that kind of freedom. Of course, the worst part about it is that you also don't have a security blanket in case I'd get canceled for saying something inappropriate with something. I hope I'm not gonna do that, but you never know if people get upset about something. Like maybe in 10 years, it'll turn out that something I wrote on social media is super problematic. Hope it doesn't get to that. But yeah, no, I think it's just in general, being comic creator, the most rewarding thing is the community, definitely. And I think that I love all comments I get, but I like the Patreon comments do have a whole little special place in my heart, I guess, because like those are the comments that the first reaction I get to the newest material, and also that's where I find most of the the comments making theories and going deep dive analysis and so on.
We theorize a lot.
Probably too much.
By the way, for those who are not on Discord, it's one of the best things there. If you join, we theorize a lot, like a lot. Every update, we are there creating the most crazy theories. Some of them are very happy, most of them are very sad because
That's just recently.
You're always scared of what's going to happen, but we also hope for the best. So join us to be a part of it because it's a really fun moment for us. And regarding the independence artwork, do you work full time as an artist nowadays, or do you have other jobs too?
Nowadays, I do it full time, thanks to all of you guys.
So nice.
And I'm very, very grateful. I've been wanting to kind of shout it from the mountaintops for a long time. At the same time, I have to admit, I've been a little bit nervous about saying it out loud just because I'm afraid people will ask me why I don't upload longer episodes. Yeah, and the thing is, like, because I know I'm Webtoon, I once got a comment, someone saying like, oh, no offense, but there are other artists that upload like longer episodes and had better quality of art and so on. So why doesn't this one do it? And the honest to God answer is I'm just not that good of an artist. Or like I'm just slower, I guess. I don't know how some other people are able to pump out art so fast, but for me it takes some time. And I do work like normal office hours. Like I go to a share office nowadays and I work like my 8 hours. And if I were to try and upload longer things, I don't know. I think it would be difficult for me to manage just because when I started drawing It Is Don't Catch Colds, I did that during my time as a university student. And that's when I would crunch it really hard with being, writing essays for universities. And then the other time I was just drawing It Is Don't Catch Colds. And then I could be sitting at my laptop for like 10 or 12 hours a day. And I kind of burnt out and I've had wrist problems ever since. So I'm trying to kind of draw the comic, also keeping it at the quality that I'm happy with, but while also maintaining my physical and mental health. So please, I'm sorry, I'm trying my best. I wish I could draw fast because I'm so excited about you reading the new material. It's just that I want to keep somewhat of a buffer so I can afford to be sick sometimes or go on vacation when I want to be with family.
That's totally fair because it's a job. Like in every job, we have to take our time and to worry about our health, or else we won't be able to do it. So there's nothing wrong with you like feeling like you're slower than other people. I'm sure there are people who is lower than you too, and I mean we have to respect our rhythms really, or else we will burn out really bad. And nobody here wants that, so I think that's completely fair.
No, I definitely agree with that. And even when you have short updates, at least we know there's another one next. Right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing with your buffer that I really do like because there's nothing worse than being, especially at some of the points, because you tend to leave us at cliffhangers. So just imagine you left us at a cliffhanger and you hadn't done the next one, and then you get sick, and then we're sitting there for an extra week going, "Oh my God, what's going on?" So I'm very happy that you don't leave us hanging. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, for me, it's also important to always do that, like fulfill my commitment to Patreon. If people are paying me, I really want to be able to just provide that service. And the thing is, like, even now I actually have built up a bit of a buffer, which I'm very grateful for. And whenever I do have that, I like, when it really matters, I want also to be able to post longer updates for certain episodes. And there's gonna be like some episodes for the ongoing chapter with like the clown and the rock star that are going to be a bit longer. And I think you'll be happy that some were short in order to keep those long. But also, like, when I have a buffer, I still try to do my best to like, yeah, I like, for example, now that I have a bit of again, I am concentrating on getting the printed books available again. So I'm working, I'm almost done with the final check of book 1 to 4 again. And then I'm also working on book 5, 6, and even book 7, even though it's going to take a while until that one gets released, because that covers the latest chapter on Patreon. So excited for that.
Awesome. Right, and one of the things that you've mentioned quite a few times is that you do have your favorite web comics that you read, and you suggest your friends with some of the other comic writers, which is amazing. Do you have time, or do you think it's important that you continue to read other comics and kind of help you with your writing and give you ideas?
Yeah, to a certain degree. Sometimes I also just, when I come home, I also want a break from webcomics, just because I spend so much of my time working on mine. But I do think it's important to stay up to date, kind of like what's happening in the webcomic community. And I'm in a couple of Discord channels with other authors, and it's nice to see what other people are doing, and yeah, what's popular right now. And it's also interesting when you get in touch with someone else who is an author. It's always very interesting to read what they are creating, because I do think that it says a little bit about the person creating as well. Not that it has to be a personal tale, but just kind of what they are into, and what elements they include in the story. And for me, sometimes I can find inspiration in other comics as well. But yeah, lately I haven't been reading too much. I keep up with a few comics that unfortunately don't always update as often as I would like them to. But yeah, like when they post something, I'm on it.
That's nice.
All right, and you did mention that you started drawing when you were in university. We were curious what you were majoring in, if it was related to drawing or not. Share if you'd like, but
Yeah, no, it's fine. I was studying literature and economics, which is an interesting combination,
Very
maybe.
different.
well, I'm sure you use them both, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind
yes
of.
and no. So the thing is, like, I always wanted to become an author. Or okay, first I wanted to become like a Spice Girl, like pop star, when I was very, very young. But at some point I discovered, like, oh, maybe I have to be able to sing in order to do that. Like, but another thing that I really wanted to do was become an author. So even though I didn't think that I would ever become a comic artist, I always wanted to write a book. And when I was a teenager and I was reading lots of anime and manga, and I tried to write my books, I just didn't get very far. And I thought, like, oh, I guess this isn't meant for me. What can I do instead? And so I figured maybe I can get into publishing and help other people kind of realize their stories. And that is where literature and economics came in. And I guess I am using them to some part. That much. Honestly, I've forgotten so much about economics, but I learned a little bit about marketing, and I guess that's a mindset.
Yeah.
But even though, then I don't know. I think the good thing about studying literature, though, is that I started working It Is So Catch Colds back then, and for literature, I would find the books I could read as audiobooks, so I could listen to my study material while I was drawing my own comic, and yeah, so that gave me a lot of time to kind of do what I really wanted to do. So,
And the comic really, yeah, and the comic really shows how you care about the storyline, like the storytelling, because there are a lot of comics I love more for the art, but the stories are not bad, but I don't know. I think we see how much time and thought you invest in the storytelling of the comic, you know, and there are some details that we don't often see when telling a story
Mm.
in that format that we only see more like in books, like in prose format. And I think you are able to put them there in the comic, and it's like just a beautiful combination. You know, you do it really well, and I think that the literature degree helped a lot, maybe with that.
Thank you. I hope it does. It is like, I mean, I did spend a few years in university, but oh,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I think it made a
Um,
difference as well. Yeah.
I hope
yeah,
so.
totally.
Cool.
So what are your plans for other stories? Like, do you have anything going on now? And which genres would you like to make from now on?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, actually, I'm so excited for my next project. I haven't really posted anything about it online because I have, in the past, when I had a story idea, I would like, oh, whip up a character design, post it on Patreon, which was fun, but I felt so inconsistent because, yeah, I would change like, okay, my mind pretty fast about, okay, this is a story I want to make. No, actually, this one. But now I think that I have committed to an idea. And actually, the other day, I started thumbnailing the first
Oh,
episode,
nice.
which was really fun and difficult because it's a different genre. It's still a BL, it's still with romance, but it's gonna be like a fantasy kind of. And I'm not sure how much to tell because, yeah, I'm not sure if how much I want it to be a surprise when it gets there. Um, but guess maybe I can say like I'm not sure how much people are familiar with Norse mythology, but
Yeah, I think
it's
maybe more like from Marvel things with Thor and all.
it makes me so
You
sad.
know.
The more I'm like, no, that's not. Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm glad people enjoy it on one
Yeah,
hand, but
I
Marvel has
understand.
made them into like kind of aliens up in space or something. I mean,
Yeah,
okay,
Yeah.
up in space is maybe not super. I guess that kind of makes sense with the way mythology has kind of structured the world, but still, they're not. I mean, again, people can enjoy what they want, but it's
that's okay to
I
get mad about it.
We can see how passionate you are about it.
Yeah, and it's our
You're just like,
culture,
it's not like
so
that at all. Oh.
yeah, yeah, no, it's a little bit different, and the thing is, this is not going to be a retelling of the old tales that already exist. This is gonna, yeah, it's also gonna be my own characters and so on, but it's gonna, yeah, well, it's gonna touch on that with mythology
yeah,
and so on, and that's kind of also interesting for me now that I started drawing it a little bit because the landscape is going to be quite different, and I'm excited to kind of change the scenery also into more Scandinavian setting because so far,
yeah,
like me doing It Is Don't Catch Colds, it's been absolute blast, and I love Japan and everything. But I feel like It Is Don't Catch Colds was also me leaning a lot on manga and so on, and it's still gonna be a very manga-ish, right? But I think that one thing that I could introduce that would be maybe new to the market would be introducing something from my own culture.
yeah,
And that's the thing that I really like about Webtoon is because I love manga and I've read so much of it. And I think what's really cool is that people take their favorite things about manga, but then they are able to introduce, yeah, put a breath of fresh air into it. So I've seen some comics that take place in Germany or in I think even Brazil. There was a comic. And that's just interesting because I don't necessarily know much about, okay, Germany, I do know it, that's also my country. But there are some comics that take place in countries where I've never been there and I don't really see a lot of it in mainstream media. And that makes it more unique and interesting. And for me, I've become very picky with the media I consume in terms of if it's television, comics, or anything, because I feel like I get bored really fast nowadays because I feel like I've consumed so much as a teenager that I'm always looking for something different. Um, and yeah, I hope that my next comic will be a bit different, hopefully.
yeah. Do you think it's going to come out before IDCC ends or only afterwards?
Uh, if I can, this is also the thing. Like, I hope I can work on it while working on Instant Catch Calls, and that's again where the time time is a bit of an issue. If I
Yeah.
can, it would be great if I can release it around the time that It Is Don't Catch Colds ends, so that people can just transition from one comic to the other.
Yeah.
But it really depends on how efficiently I can work on It Is Don't Catch Colds and this at the same time, because I love working on the new project, but I always feel guilty when doing it, even though that's also technically work, or not technically, it is work. But I feel guilty for whenever I'm not working on It Is Don't Catch Colds, which is what people are reading now, what I have to upload once a week. So for me, it's very difficult also just mentally to compartmentalize like when to work on what. So
Yeah.
and that's another
I
reason
think
why
it
I
would be,
need a big buffer.
yeah, I think it would be good because I think feel a little bit of orphans when it is finish. Like we won't have every week updates to look forward to, and it would be really nice to have something else from you to read. So we
Yeah.
feel a little bit sad, less sad though.
Yeah,
I
definitely
hope
look
you
forward.
like it.
Definitely looking forward to whatever you put out in the future. And in terms of deciding what to work on, I totally get that. I mean, both me and Mary, we write fanfics, and I'm so bad for jumping from one to the other. I'll be in the
Mine is
middle of writing
everywhere.
one. I'm like, I gotta get this done, and then this idea pops into my head, and I've half written a whole new thing. So I totally get that. But
Oh, yeah.
but I mean, yeah, if you can, if you were able to line it up, I think that would be, I think we would, if anything, prefer that to like you starting it early. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, really looking forward to all of that. So I
Yeah,
think we're moving on to
really.
the next section now,
Hmm.
Mary. Okay,
Yeah,
so
now we're going to talk about the backstage of the comic, like some of the idiots don't catch codes process making.
all right, so
Sandy,
we'll
do you want to
start
start?
with how previously in other Q&As, you've talked about the tools and the digital resources that you've used. We were wondering, is there anything new that you've started using that makes your life easier? Something new that maybe new artists would find would help them with their goals when it comes to publishing their own comic.
Um, I feel honestly, whatever new things I've learned is linked to Clip Studio. I really think it's a really amazing tool, and I always find new material and ways to use it. Honestly, I haven't come close to using it to its full capacity. Um, I wish I had more specific thing to answer, but like if you're going to invest in a program, I would really highly recommend Clip Studio because you just pay for it once and then you will always have it. And yeah, I don't know. I think there are just so many functions to it that I can't even summarize because there's so much. So boring answer maybe, but it would be
No, not at
difficult for me
all.
to say highlight one.
Not
No,
at all.
that's good.
It's what most people recommend, really. Like every Q&A of every comic I see, I think all of them use it, and everybody says it's a pretty complete tool. So, um, okay, so you said a while ago that you when you started the comic, you didn't have like their whole personalities and stories and um, relationship planned. You had to get to know them more as you wrote, as you draw, so you could like come up with what was going to happen next. So could you tell us a little more about it? Like as a writer, that's my favorite part of thinking the characters. Like I mainly write fanfic, so I have pre-existing characters to analyze and to write from. But it's a really interesting process of creating your own, and I think it makes a lot of sense that sometimes you have to let them speak too. You gotta let them write themselves a little bit. So how is that process for you?
Good question. It's so hard to pinpoint. I think for me, when I'm like, honestly, that's also something that I've had to ask myself when I've been working on my new comic, where I sometimes ask myself, how did I do it? How did I do it for It Is Don't Catch Colds? because it was so much trial and error. And I think for me, it's often like I start with a very basic personality trait of them. Like Sota was supposed to be more energetic and vibrant and so on. Well, now was more reclusive and somber and so on. And I think those were very much based on existing tropes in anime and manga. And it started evolving from there, where I started to ask myself, okay, but how did they get to this point, and what kind of backstories would make sense for them? Yeah, I think I'm not sure if I said this in a Q&A before, but I think now is one of the best examples I have, and maybe it's worth repeating if I have said it before, that at first he was supposed to be the kind of like the Sasuke character in Naruto, right? Like the popular guy is very somber and cool, and every girl thinks he's so amazing, and yeah, like and that felt kind of uninspiring to me. I was like, okay, but that's how they usually are, you know, and not just in Naruto, but in so many manga. I think Fruits Basket too, although he's not, has a decent personality there. But there's like the girls in school are so one-dimensional. They will run around and being like, oh, he's the prince of school. It is very cringe. And I think I came across a video at one point, Rachel and June on YouTube, who are like a Japanese American couple, and they were talking about Japanese high school. And June, like the husband, he said that the popular guy in school was the one who was the friendly, outgoing guy, and so on. And to me, I was like, oh my god, that makes sense. Maybe I shouldn't think so much about manga and anime logic, but actually take more inspiration from real life. And then I thought, like, okay, so I guess with him having this personality, it wouldn't really make sense for him to be popular. And when I thought of that, I'm like, okay, and how would that affect him if he's actually a very lonely guy? And he wasn't always like this. There must have been something in his past that changed. And then it just becomes like you start actually tuning in logic, and one thing leads to the other. And then the more you develop one character, then you can also see like, okay, how does this character work? Because I usually like to think of my main characters as opposites. I think that's usually a very interesting combination. Like maybe they have some things in common that connects them, but and now in Sota's case, they both have what the other person doesn't, which creates this interesting dynamic, to me at least, where they are so jealous of one another, and both think probably like, oh, he must think highly of himself. Well, it's not true at all. And so when I come up with one thing for one character, that helps me also think about the other character, or what would be their reaction to it, or how would they view it, or an effect, and so on. And it just becomes this web where it just builds layer on layer, I guess. And so on. It really helps to have interesting side characters. I think there was one time when I read a manga where the author, like in Japanese manga, they will write like an author's note here and there. And she said, whenever I don't know what's supposed to happen next, I introduce a new character, which was such a like very simple like thing to do and kind of advice, but I took it to heart. And like whenever I introduce a character, that doesn't mean I don't know what's going on anymore. It's but I think like it's still somewhat good advice to keep in mind, where like, okay, this is how far I've gotten with the existing cast of characters. Like, and I feel like I have hit a wall. I don't know how to progress. Then maybe you need to add another component that you hadn't thought of before, looking at it at a different angle. And sometimes adding that new character can just unlock a whole like bunch of new opportunities and so on. So for me, it is no catch colds. Like the side characters are very important, and then love to flesh them out a little bit, even if it doesn't all make it into the comic.
And it makes a lot of sense because you're dealing with a soccer team, so there are a lot of players, and at a school with a lot of like classmates, so it makes a lot of sense to see them interacting with other people. Like I love seeing them together, but I also get a little bored when comics only show the main characters together. I like to see their lives outside of their relationship, you know. And I remember you answered that on Q&A about now, and I think it was such a good choice you made, because it does not only affect them but also their surroundings, like not even the side characters we know, but I hate it in Japanese productions when they depict the girls as this thing, and like they leave to only look for like the most handsome guy and the richest guy. That's not real, I'm sure that's
Wow.
not real.
Mm.
So it's nice because we see a whole context of where they live and um, the people they are surrounded by. So I think it was a really, really good choice you made there.
Thank
What I
you.
really like about the side characters too in Idiots Don't Catch Cold is that you flush them out without giving them the spotlight. One of my biggest pet peeves is when
Mm.
Omega decides, I have to show you everything about this character all at once, and then you don't see the main characters for like God knows how long,
Well,
right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
to be able to see like obviously there's some backstory to a lot of them that we don't know because he doesn't make it in, but you can tell that you have like this idea of who these people are, and that's why they interact with the main characters the way they do. Um, and we get that without you having to like sideline the story in order for us to learn about them. So I really enjoy that.
thank
and I
you.
think it's important to like romantic relationships aren't the only important things that people have, like friendships and family. They're also as important as I think we like put them in a hierarchy,
Yeah.
where the often the romantic relationship is the most important, but I think it's so nice to see um them outside of that, because I love Sota and Kizuki's friendship. Like, it's
Mm.
one of my favorite things of the comic. So um, it just adds to the characters, to see them other than being the main romantic character of the comic.
Thank you. Thank you. Honestly, for me, it's also one of the advices I would give to other people who would like to write romance. Like some people can pull it off when it's just like the two main characters locked in a
Oh,
room somewhere and so on.
yeah,
But I've read so many comics where there doesn't seem to be a lot of side characters at all, or even if there are side characters, they have no personality and so on. And sometimes it just feels like there are no other characters in the whole world than the main characters. And I think that removes so much of the romantic tension, because part of the fun is also kind of like, oh, these two characters choose each other in a world of where they have so many other options, but they still like each other. And if you don't have, yeah, a cast of characters on the side, then like, for example, if you have the characters, they just happen to run into each other, and it's supposed to be a romantic moment. But like sometimes when I read those comics, I'm like, yeah, who else is he gonna bump into? Why is he surprised? He never interacts with anyone else. So it's
yeah,
just, and when you have this moment like, oh, no, they happen to be alone with each other, that's where your heart is supposed to skip a beat, because that's supposed to be special. And you can't really
yeah.
do that if you don't have anyone else in that comic. So,
Yeah, and you know
Totally
what?
agree.
Actually, just you saying that makes me think of the first chapter. Because in the first chapter, you really built how there's this weird tension between the two of them, right? But even they don't know what it is, you know? They're just left staring at each other, glaring at each other, you know, having competitions without even understanding why. And I think that really played into their relationship as it grew.
hmm, yeah. Oh, I'm
Both,
glad it comes off that way.
yeah, and come, we love them, but they're both a little stupid to realize something, so they need other people to help them.
The name
Yeah.
of the comic is perfect.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so Sandy?
Okay, so um, one of the things that we talk about a lot, I know that you're a bit of a lurker on Discord, but when you may notice one of the things we talk about a lot are your facial expressions. Um, we already know it's one of your favorite parts to draw, but like definitely as the comic has progressed, we've noticed like there's some really remarkable art coming out of that, and uh, honestly, I think that's really what draws people in. Um, can you tell us a little bit more about like how you come up with those faces and like when you decide to make them super silly, because I always find that you do that at like the perfect moment, and stuff like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's interesting because I think that I've gotten better at drawing serious expressions. And when I mean serious, I mean when they are, it can be when they're laughing or screaming, like when I don't draw them in a goofy way because, yeah, because I've just learned more about art. But the more I've gotten better at anatomy and like, okay, the mouth is supposed to be around this area, I feel like my goofy expressions have gotten a little bit worse where like I feel some of the art I put out on Tumblr where it's supposed to be goofy and really funny, like some of those are almost better just because I didn't understand anatomy as much, and so I could just exaggerate it a whole lot more. So I sometimes I have to kind of force myself to disregard what I've learned over the years in order to get more expression. But in terms of like, but I am proud of like some of the, again, you know, facial expressions that are supposed to be taken seriously. And I think like, what some of the expressions I'm most proud of in that sense is when Sota and Now argue and you have in profile where they are like screaming at each other, because in the past I think I would draw like more manga-ish where it just goes up here and down like, you know, big mouth. But then I felt like I wasn't able to get out true expression through that. It just it looked too cartoonish. And so I started like looking at myself, and I would take pictures of myself, which looks very stupid when you're just taking a picture of yourself in profile, like but then I just noticed like, oh, so this is what it actually looks like in real life. And I so I just doing those expressions myself, taking pictures and using it as references, and finding a middle ground between cartoon and realism in order to capture like something that you would see more in real life. And I think that's hopefully also what kind of gets that emotion out of people, where it's just leaving manga territory a little bit in order to get to, again, real life.
Yeah, I think you've really hit that. I think, and I don't know if you pay close attention to the eyes, but I feel like a lot of, especially the more recent, like serious poses and stuff, you have a lot going on with the eyes. Like I find that that's where we can look at that and we can like see what they're feeling, which that takes talent. So
thank you. Yeah, I do pay attention, like a lot of
amazing.
attention to it. Thank you. I'm glad you think that.
So we know your sister's here, so we'd like to say a huge hi to her, and we know she's a huge help to the comic. You frequently talk about her, and we also know that being an independent artist may be very lonely sometimes. I'm self-employed, and my job gets lonely too sometimes. So I believe it's similar. So do you have other people helping you with the comic too, or just like friends who are also artists or like authors, and you can just like talk to, share your experiences with?
Yeah, like most of the time it's like my sister because she's close at hand and she's also working on creating her own comic, so which I hope people will check out when it's time. It's gonna take a while until she publishes it, but she has
So
been
nice.
such a yeah, it's gonna be great. She already thumbnailed like the first chapter, I think, and it's I think that we have different styles both when it comes to art and like a bit more genre and so on. But I think we both agree on what we think is good. So we're able to help each other out by, like, for example, now that I was, I'm writing the new chapter, and I got stuck, and like, kind of talking with her, she was able to pinpoint the things that I was missing and adding like, put ideas into my head that really connected it all. So that is, when it comes to editing, she's the only person I really talk to, I would say, about that stuff. But I'm on Discord channels, and there I can see what other people are talking about, but we don't talk about the contents of our comics so much, I would say. It's more about the experience drawing and putting it out on Webtoon or Tapas or whatever. I am friends with Amanda, who is, like you may know, like Plain Boy and Prince, Daimao, and so on. But again, we mostly talk about the experience of like being an author and giving each other like advice on working about it. But what I have done is I have nerdy friends in real life, and two of them have also become inspired and like, oh, they also kind of want to make comics. So I kind of made a group. So we are 4 people, like it's me, my sister, and these 2 friends. And we sometimes have inspiration meetings, we call them, where we will meet up and we will all talk about our projects and like show, like maybe discuss, okay, there's something where we can talk about like the contents and plot points and ask for feedback and so on. Or also like just showing, this is what I thumbnail, what do you guys think, and so on. So that's really, really nice. And we usually just get brunch, and it's like an excuse to meet up, have good food, and then talk nerdy stuff. And that's really great.
Sorry, I just kind of took a quick glance at the at the chat, and she's asking you to talk about her more and why you love her, Amanda.
Oh, oh yeah. Yeah. How did it start? I'm not sure how much I've even talked online. I mean, I feel like everyone knows that we're friends because we gush about each other. But yeah, I became friends with her, or we started talking before I posted It Is Don't Catch Colds. Like I found her comic on Tapas, and I thought, like, this looks too good. She didn't draw this. This is like a re-upload of a manga. And then I checked it out, and I think her sense of humor, some parts of it is very inspired by Japanese comics, but there was a part of it that made me also think, okay, no, this is her work. This is a webcomic, actually. And I thought it was so cool. Like, that was one of the best comics that I saw on the platform. And when I found out that she lives in Denmark, that was also like, oh, wow, we're kind of neighbors. And I like decided to follow her also on Tumblr and so on. And at some point, I saw that she was in a discourse on Tumblr talking about some topic that, as she does, she's very open about her opinions and things like that, which I like about her. I myself don't really want to get too much into internet drama because I feel like you just can't win. There's always going to be someone who doesn't agree with you on a topic. It doesn't matter what it's about. But I wrote to her to kind of just say like, hey, I support you. And we started talking, and our like messages got longer and longer. But at the same time, it felt like we both wanted to give each other an out, like, oh, in case you think like, you know, this is annoying, because I know also to her, I was just a rando writing to her. And we stopped writing, and I think like a year or so passed, and I actually started uploading It Don't Catch Colds. And some people may know the story there, that in her comic, Obnoxious Hero-kun, one character says, only idiots catch colds. And she started getting a lot of comments, people being like, oh, is that a reference to the other comic? Which it wasn't supposed to be. She didn't know my comic. And that's when I kind of contacted her again and was like, hey, it's Sami. If you remember, I did it. I made that comic I talked about. And that's when we like really became friends. And what I really like about her is just she's very funny in real life, too. She has to be, I guess, to make her comics. And I think we do share a lot of the same values. And I think we can just tell each other everything. And even if we don't agree with each other on something, it's fine. We don't like have a fallout over it. And I think most of the time we know where we both are coming from. And yeah, and it's just really cool to have that friend. So that we are both, I think like I got her into joining Webtoon, especially when they had the bonus program where it was kind of easy to like make a little bit of extra money. And she's the one who got me into Tapas Early Access. So it's kind of like, that makes it sound like we're just friends for the money. No, but it's just,
no, not at all.
But rather than just seeing
not
each
at
other,
all. Doesn't sound like it at all. And she's now in the chat going, no, I didn't want you to talk about me. But anyway.
But she also asked you to say that you love her before, so
yeah.
Yeah, I love you, Amanda.
That's
Keeping
so
an
nice.
eye on me.
I'm a huge fan of Playboy and Prince.
Oh, yeah, no,
really
she has
like
such
it.
good comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, this sounds a little bit. I'm just gonna refill my tea a little bit. This
Not at
teapot,
all.
I don't know, like it's so cute, but it's so
cute.
shit. I'm sorry, language, because it's just
No
always
problem.
spills. No, but yeah, like I think it's just very cool to have someone, yeah, where we really, it's not like, I don't think I have anyone who is competition. I don't like to think of other authors that way. I think there is room for more comics and more readers and so on. But I think that she and I will have each other's backs in a different way than maybe I have with people I don't know as well, maybe, you know.
And I think also to deal with the comments, the feedback you get, like sometimes it's awesome, but sometimes it can be really hard to, depending on what people say. So it's nice to have someone like to vent to. I think it's important not to keep it all to
Yeah.
yourself, you know. So that's good.
Yeah.
So okay, about the comic again. Um, are there any characters that you have grown more fond of over time, or are there any of them you dislike?
I think I mean I like all of my characters. I was gonna say like I mean there are definitely those I like more than others. And I think it goes in waves who is my favorite character. Like I think also who I relate to most. In the beginning it was very much Sota and so on. And I think that I may have touched on that subject before, that Sota in school was kind of inspired by my time in school. I was able to get good grades in the end, but it was a struggle. But later on also, like when Now was going through his difficult time, that was something that I, like his backstory and so on, is something that I started drawing during COVID. And for me, like that was a difficult time. And for me, it was very cathartic to kind of get that energy out in the backstory. Maybe a little like too much looking back at it, but I wouldn't say that I regret it, because I think that even though it's very depressing,
You shouldn't regret it. It makes a lot
yeah.
of sense.
Thank you. Yeah, like I think it would be frustrating to me, like because Now is such an important character, it would be frustrating for me to not put all the information out there that I think is somewhat relevant to the plot and what's to come. But during that time, it was just very nice because it was for mentally great for me as well to be able to, again, get that out. But it also felt that I was able to get it out in a way where I didn't burden anyone else, because he's a fictional character. He's not going to complain. Lately, I haven't gotten to those parts yet. I'm getting more excited about her as well. In the beginning, she was kind of also just like, oh, she's supposed to be a cute girl. But now that she's gonna get a bit more screen time and a bit more fleshed out, I actually get more excited about her as a character as well. As far as it comes
Makes
to
me
characters,
happy. So sorry, but that both makes me happy and worried at the same
Yeah, I
time.
know, right?
Like,
I'm
I'm
the same
really
way. I'm like,
excited
yay,
to
but
know
no.
I think you like it.
Eventually,
think,
yeah, after we go
yeah.
through whatever you're gonna put us through.
Okay,
Yeah, no,
sorry, go on.
I think in terms of characters I don't like, right now I would say that one character I barely know the name of in the soccer club, with short hair, that is just too
Yeah,
similar to Takeo, and he has like
yeah.
he doesn't really have a proper personality. And I think that I just changed his personality in the beginning of Clown and the Rockstar. Before he was super stoic, and then in Clown and Rockstar in the beginning he's sitting like very smug. So I'm like, who are you even? And that's something where I don't like, because I feel like that's me being a bit inconsistent and just using him for whatever scene I need him to. And now I've revealed it, so you'll never be able to reread that part without having this in mind. So maybe I just kind of something bad there. But yeah, I think in terms of characters that do get more screen time, most of them I just am very fond of. And I think there's going to be one character that's not going to be very popular, I believe.
Oh my God.
But I like that character just because I like what this character does for the plot.
Oh
And
my
that's
God.
maybe just that's just me also. Like for example, he wasn't super popular either, and right now I don't even know where he stands in the fan community. I think he's gotten a little bit better, but I've like loved him from the start because he stirs up some shit, language, drama, and that's very fun for me as an author. Like I like interesting characters. So
Yeah, I think he gets more sympathy for being with Hugh because they're a great pairing. I absolutely love the mini comic your sister made of them. I love seeing more of their relationship, their dynamics. And yeah, I don't think he's a character that we properly dislike as much as
Mm.
we want to know him more to know where is he's coming from, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
No, I would agree
yeah,
with that. Yeah, since especially since learning what happened between him and now, it's really made a big difference. You're like, oh, so they were both kind of
yeah.
idiots. Gotcha.
And he's
And talk.
also no, say go.
No, no, you go on. Go ahead.
No, it's just to say, he's also in many theories we have, so we talk about him a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I think it's so cool. And I think we were talking about side characters and fleshing them out. That is actually probably going to be the one exception I make where I want to make like maybe a chapter or so with the backstory of you and Ryu. Um, and I and I
Okay,
think
that's
that
okay.
people,
I'll deal with
yeah,
that one.
yeah, yeah. I think people will like that one. And I'm not sure how to do it. I think it's going to be like maybe Ryu telling Sota because
Ooh,
yeah,
that would be
no,
good. I think that would be really good.
yeah, I have like I do know their backstory, and I think it might redeem you a little bit. He's still like a little bit of a bitch, but like he's not all that
But
bad.
it's no, it's so are sometimes too. That's just life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's gonna take a while until we get to that point. Quite a while, but I look forward to that part myself.
Yeah, we too. We do too. Um, okay, so you were saying about relating to the characters too, and that changing.
Mm.
Um, as of now, who do you think you relate to the most? And one thing I really love about now is his music taste because it's very similar to mine. And I was wondering if you relate to it too, if you like that kind of music he listens to, if
Mm.
that's something relatable to you
Yeah, I
with him.
listen to that music sometimes, and it's very great for karaoke.
Uh-huh.
I don't. The thing is, like, Now's music taste was inspired by two people. Number one is my dad. He was born 1950 and very much the Beatlemania time. And so
Yeah.
growing up, I just heard a lot of like he was playing his songs and which I didn't care too much about as a kid, but there are some fond memories of it. Um, but I was like that made me of course familiar with these bands. And the thing is like when I went to school, there was this one guy in class. Like when I was in school, I was mostly sitting by myself drawing my manga characters, like the weeb I was. Um, and I remember overhearing conversation between people that I saw as the popular kids, and especially one of the guys who was the cool guy playing the guitar in a band and so on. I remember him having a conversation with some girls about old artists versus new ones. And he said that, oh, the new groups, they're not the same because they're so manufactured. They'll pick some artists and then other people will write the songs for them and just make sure they have this perfect image. Meanwhile, back in the day with Beatles and so on, they would write their own stuff. So it would and it's not about finding the prettiest face. I'm not sure if he said that, but that was kind of the sentiment. Like they were the real deal, writing all of their own music and so on. And that wasn't me like necessarily. I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily agree. I understand what he means. I just thought it was an interesting standpoint. For me, I think if one person likes to sing, the other one writes to write, why not add them together? Like I'm not a music snob in that sense. But
Yeah.
I still thought that was an interesting point of view. Um, and I thought, yeah, I don't know, when I came to now and I was thinking about he like the popular kid in my class, I thought that would be maybe a cool thing to add, and maybe that having that attitude for now a little bit. And then I started like
Mhm.
researching the bands. Like I looked up some because when I draw, I love listening to documentaries and so on. And I was listening to some documentaries about the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Queen, um, and then I got really into it because I love history. And that was kind of the combination that created Now's interest in it, so that he would become, yeah, more of a three-dimensional character.
Yeah, and it's nice because now it's what that's what is making him know more people, like socializing more again and um, getting to that point where he wants to be now of having maybe making more friends, you know, and finding a
Mm,
community for himself. So I really like that the link to that is the music, his musical taste, because it's really important to him.
yeah. I think so
All
too.
right, I think we're gonna have to speed things up a little bit.
Yeah,
He's still
we still have a lot of.
I'm gonna skip to a question that I really
Uh-huh.
want answered. Your promos. You haven't done one in a while, okay? But the ones where you do like the little skit that's like the fourth wall break between usually Soda and somebody else. um, honestly, I want to know, are you giving us Easter eggs in there like sometimes? Because it seriously, some of them drive me nuts, especially the one with Soda's plush. I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, if she's telling us how they're feeling in the moment of when this is happening in in the actual webcomic, like, what are you saying? And I don't even expect you to really answer me, but I just really wanted to ask that.
uh, I'm not sure if I can confirm or deny, but I guess I'm gonna say that it is like somewhat intentional.
yeah,
So
yeah. I love
That's
those
about all I'm
promos
gonna
too.
get. Okay.
And like since you talked about it, we also theorize a lot about the titles of the chapters. Like every time you post the first update for the first episode for one chapter, we always like make a huge theories about what's gonna happen. How is it the process for you to think about the titles? Because for me, it's a very difficult thing thinking about
Hmm,
like naming stories. So how
yeah.
is it for you?
I think at first I didn't think too much about it, to be honest. Like, I mean, from the beginning, of course, I do put some effort into it, but I think it became more fun over time, especially now that
Mm,
people are making theories about it.
yeah.
Um, and there are definitely chapters where it is easier than others. Like, I think one of the chapter names I'm most proud of is Yesterday, even though it's so simple because there are so many layers to it with the
Mhm.
Beatles, but also that is a flashback and so on, and the lyrics of the song Yesterday itself. Um, but there are times where, for example, with The Clown and the Rock Star, I, I did not know what to name it at first. And I was like considering at some point, like, maybe I'll just call it like Circus Cafe or something. But then when I was lurking on Discord, someone was saying, I hope she doesn't just call it the school festival. I was like, oh, damn it. Like, I have to raise the bar. And that it was really great because I asked my sister, and that's the thing, like, we just kind of, like, feel, yeah, complete each other. Because she was at once able to kind of pinpoint, like, oh, no, should just be a clown and a rock star. Like, and that was, yeah, and that's a really great title because it does
It's super cool, yeah.
yeah, I think especially, but when the chapter is wrapped up, it'll make
Hmm.
even more sense. But yeah, when I can, I try to put in a little bit more meaning into it, especially now that people are theorizing.
Oh my God, everything Aina says makes my head go like buzzing with theories and possibilities for what's gonna happen. Um, do you have a favorite scene or chapter so far?
That's so difficult. I don't know. Like it also, I think I have a couple. Like the first thing that comes to mind is astronauts and stars when they are laying on the
Yeah,
bed. Uh, and I think like there are some of the funny scenes that I really love, like the hair gum situation.
yeah,
Um, lately, my favorite scene like is probably when they have their second sleepover. I think that's the second one, right? Like when Sota is comforting now and telling the pea up his nose story. Um, like I like emotionally hitting scenes. Either they should be very funny or very like dramatic or very sad. Um, and so, yeah, I think some of my favorite scenes are the ones coming up, and I'm working on a chapter that's gonna have hopefully what's gonna be one of my favorite scenes.
oh
Because I'm
my
also so like anticipating what people are gonna write about it.
God. Yeah, I can't wait for it. Because every time you say you can wait for our reactions, I'm like, okay, is it something good or something bad?
Or both.
But I get really curious. Yeah, totally. Um, so Sandy, do you want to go to the next
Yeah, well, we're
block
gonna
of
skip over
questions?
to
Yeah.
about the story, and I'm gonna kind of throw two questions in together at once. So, um, do you have the ending plan? Kind of sounds like you do, or are you still deciding exactly how the story's gonna go? And then, is there a general moment or chapter, something that at all that you can share with us that makes you most excited for us to read?
I usually when I came up with the story, the first thing that I came up with was what I would call the skeleton of the story, like the main points to go through. But then I usually just, it sounds so gross, flesh it out as I go. Like I kind of go arc by arc, where I kind of have a rough idea what's supposed to happen, but often I feel like it's difficult for me to really pinpoint it unless I get there, because the characters, even if you have an idea in your head, as you put it on paper, it is a bit of a different feeling, especially some of the details that you add may become very important later on. So right now, the current arc is the one that I have somewhat figured out. And then there is a big blur where I have written some notes, some very loose ideas that I want to include, but then it's always like a puzzle. Every time I get to a new arc, I have to see what can I keep, what makes sense, and how do I fit it all together. As for the ending, though, I do have an idea for like that arc. I feel like I know what's going to happen now, blur, and then I know, kind of.
I'm
So-
sorry, I like that
So
blur.
the ending itself is already planned.
The-
The ending itself is already like
Yeah,
planned.
I don't know the last page, like what kind of note it's going to end, but
Uh-huh.
I know the main focus plot-wise
Okay.
of the last
Uh-huh.
arc, and there's going to be a sort of an
We are going to see them like at least till the beginning of college, maybe. Is that still accurate? Is that still
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah,
Okay.
that is like that's an arc I actually have kind of figured out, like what I want for that
Okay.
part, and I think that's also where it's gonna end, like officially. But you never know.
Uh-huh.
Maybe I'll just be like, no, one more
So
chapter.
we'll see, like it won't be like a story where like they get together and it ends. We'll see a bit of them together
Yeah,
too.
no. Yeah, like
Yeah.
even though it's a bit of
Okay.
a blur, you just have
Uh-huh.
to do that, because I hate reading like 8 volumes
Yeah.
of manga where like it's this constant pining and it ends on like their first kiss. I mean, you can't do
Yeah, me
that.
too.
You have to have a few kisses.
Yeah, I'm so glad you think like that because I
Yeah.
totally agree. Um, okay, this is the one I want to see answered the most, and I think the community as well, because I don't think there's one update that goes without us talking about it. That is the keywords that you shared with us in the last Q&A. I don't know if I remember all. It was rival, sleepover, um, amusement park, karaoke, and there was something else
Oh.
that I forgot now. Okay, so just so people can remember what it is. But we wanted to know if you can share something about them that is more like up to date, and if there's something you can say that has already happened. Like sleepover is obvious, of course, and we know karaoke and amusement park haven't happened yet. But is there anything, because okay, we especially theorize about the half confession. We have no idea what half a confession is, if it has already happened, if it's going to happen yet, or if we're going to be able to say it is the half confession in the story, like if it's going to be clear for us. So if you can talk something, like tell us something about it, we'll be really glad.
Yeah, I think that's the one that people are most interested in, right? With a
Yeah.
half confession. I can tell you it has not happened yet. And I think when it happens, people will know, probably.
Okay.
Let's see. Like sleepover has happened. And I think what I can also share is that the keywords, this is like, hopefully it's not going too far, but if I remember correctly, like the keywords, I think they're all gonna happen in this arc.
Oh, great.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the rest is a
Okay.
blur.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and the arc, well, we'll see how long it goes. I haven't figured everything out, but I have like the most important things figured out, and that's in the keyword. Yeah, as for the, yeah, I think that's enough. Spoilers.
Do you know how much of the story we still have left? Like, are we past the like half of the story already?
We're past half. I think so. I mean, it's so difficult for me to say because I usually, plan the story arc for arc. and I never know how
Yeah.
long something is going to be, how many chapters. And even when you write a full script with dialogue, you don't know, like, is this going to be 5 pages or 10 pages? So it's time-wise, it's so difficult for me to say. But I can't imagine it being. No, I think like we must be over half of it. And like when
Okay.
I was like the other day when I was writing on the new chapter, I was like, oh my God, we're getting to this part. I've been waiting for this for so long. And that was almost a bit scary for me, where I'm like, oh my God, we are slowly approaching some sort of like, yeah, like not the ending,
Uh-huh.
but the third act, I guess, like
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah. Uh-huh. That's great to know. I think it makes us calmer in a way to
I
know
don't
that.
know. People are freaking out because
I,
all the key words are like now. So
I hope I haven't forgotten a key word, and like I think that's like, yeah. The
yeah.
arc is gonna be
Yeah.
somewhat long, I think. I'm not sure. It's very difficult to tell, but yeah.
And another thing people want to say, you already shared that we will have a side couple that band inspired. So are we going to meet them soon? Are there gonna be any other LGBTQ characters, couples too in the story? What can you tell us about it?
The side couple are gonna interact a bit more in this arc. Um, so I think you guys already like
Uh,
have your suspicions. As for other side couples, I don't know. Like sometimes I play around with like, oh, there would have very interesting. There is at least one more character that's gonna be confirmed to be something.
mhm.
Um, and then there are other characters where I'm thinking, oh, that would be interesting. Like there are quite a few side couples that I think would be interesting. At the same time, I don't want to include too many LGBT, like, how do you say, like confirmed couples and so on, just because I want to keep it very more realistic. And
Yeah.
I think there are like, especially in Japan, like not saying
Mhm.
there are no other LGBT characters, it's just that they would not necessarily be very open about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's say even if, yeah, if someone is this or that, like who do they trust with that information and so on. So I feel like even if I like the idea of certain couples, maybe I would do that more like a doujinshi almost, like a side thing, playing around with that
Mhm.
idea. But I want to be a bit selective with that. And there are some BLs where just everyone is gay, and that's fine. I think that's also a thing in its own, where it can just be very freeing and just imagine this world and this community. But for when it comes to this Don't Catch Colds, at least at this part, I don't know what's going to happen in the blur section, right? Maybe I will just include something. But I want it to be a bit of an isolating feeling for Sota.
Yeah.
And having, like, I don't want to go super depressing. Everything is like, oh, very like homophobic or whatever. Like,
But it's an issue, right?
there is, yeah, I don't want it to be like, no, everything is super fine. And I think that is like a struggle that a lot of people experience, but also kind of may want to read about. Not always like the super hard struggle, but just yeah, I don't know. I think that is just a
Struggle
touch of realism
to,
I like to keep.
yeah.
Um,
I think we all have our own prejudice too. Like we have to deal a lot of with our inner stuff too, not
yeah,
only the outside one. So, yeah.
yeah.
Um, so there are two other characters, I guess I can say that, that we often talk about. They are Amy, that like she appeared once in the comic, and we're very interested in knowing more about her. Um, and the other one I particularly want to know more about is Tomo. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so the little
Oh,
girl.
Tomoe. You mean, oh, Tomoe. I was like,
Tomoe.
oh, wait.
Tomoe.
Yeah, I thought you meant
Okay.
it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Can you say something about them if they're going to appear more in the comic or again, or like Tomo for the first time?
Yeah, Amy, like now, sister is definitely gonna reappear. Like, and that is
Mhm.
like her coming back is something that I have a pretty clear vision of. And
Mhm.
that's not gonna be this arc necessarily. It's
Mhm.
gonna take a bit more, but she's gonna be an influential character to the
Nice.
story. Um,
We already
uh,
love her. We don't even know
I'm
her, but
glad.
we already love her.
she said like one line or something. We
Yeah.
already love her.
Yeah, I love that, especially since like she appeared like 3 times, I think, and one of them she was just yelling at her mother. So I'm glad that she still
Yeah.
left a good impression. Yeah, with Tomoe, for those who don't know, that is my like a character I posted on Tumblr. She was supposed to initially be a Naruto original, like my own OC, like Naruto
Yeah.
character. Like if you check out the Tumblr, it's like I did that in my early 20s. I still stand by it in one way because I think that some of the content is still very funny, but it is very niche. It's very weird, so please don't take it seriously if you do check it out.
No problem.
Like don't judge me by it, please. I don't know. I think like it's difficult. I think there will be a character, but I'm not sure if I will make that into Tomoe. I think I'll only be able to tell when we get there because it's
Okay,
also going to
no
be very
problem.
late into the story. And I think on one hand, it would be very nice to include her just because she's basically the character that started it all. Because at first I wanted to make a story about her where I take her out of the Naruto universe and just, yeah, like because she is a very fun character, I think. And then it didn't turn
Supposed
out
to
that way.
be, was she supposed to be the daughter of Now and Soda in that other universe? You
Yes,
had
yes,
one?
she was.
Okay. Okay.
And then I just became so invested in Nao and Sota's story that
Mhm.
yeah, that I wanted to focus on that. And then I wasn't sure at all if Tomoe would even fit anymore. So I'm
Yeah,
still not sure how to go about it. Yeah, we'll see, actually. I guess we'll see.
yeah. She's really cute though.
Thank you.
I really like her. Um, so I think we have covered all the questions about the story itself.
Yeah,
And now
we'll switch
Sandy,
over to the
yeah.
fandom now. But before I get into the questions, though, I just want to give you an FYI. I am writing a fanfic about Tomoa, so
Oh,
So am I, so am
I'm
I.
gonna make her whatever I want because all I have is a picture to go by. But
yeah. Yeah, do
Yeah,
that.
so
That's
am
really
I.
cool.
I love
um,
her. I always look at the little drawing you made of her for a Q&A, and she's so cute.
oh yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so looking back over the course of planning and the releases for Idiots Don't Catch Cold, we're sure there's probably, well, we know that the fandom's changed. um, and then we were wondering, how do you perceive this change? And is there anything you wish fans didn't do?
Oh, wow. We're getting to the tea here. um, I think like I mean it's a huge change from the beginning. I mean at the very beginning people would mostly comment that this my comic reminded them of Naruto and Haikyuu, which I want to say like it's totally fine because it was inspired by those shows and at first I took it very hard because it was just yeah I tried to move away from doing fan content and I had yeah so um but it's and I don't mind if people say compared nowadays. Just want to make that clear. But first of all, people of course are now actually commenting on what's happening in the comic rather than just saying which characters they remind them of, design-wise or personality-wise. And I think like when I first started posting my comic on Patreon, it was like posting it into the void. Even though like I was so I didn't super mind it because I was still very grateful for whoever was on Patreon at the time, and I myself am not necessarily the person who is super active commenting myself, also with my wrist problems and so on. But nowadays, it's just, you know, Patreon, as I said before, it's like one of my favorite places to read comments because people are so invested. And I mean, even just like this live stream is such a great example of how this community has grown. And I think it's so wonderful that I think it's such a positive community where I don't really see people being mean to each other. I'm sure like maybe it happens, but I think I read like at least 80-90% of the comments I get across the platforms. And I haven't seen anything severe, like to my knowledge.
Yeah.
I think if there's anything I wish people didn't do, I don't know. I don't think so. Because even when people, I don't really have much to complain about. Because even people who have criticized the comic or me, I don't want to tell them not to do it because that I want to know what people are thinking. As long as people are polite about it, right? And that's the thing. Like people to this point, for the most part, have been very nice when they have
Mhm.
like voiced their opinion on something. And I think it's also very important to get that feedback. I mean, a bigger company who puts out products, they will pay like people to do surveys and to find out what people are thinking and so on. And I just get that for free basically with the feedback. So, and I think it is good to get genuine feedback, honestly.
And we really feel that the community is very protective of the comic and of you.
Oh yeah,
So
we're so protective
whenever
of you in the
someone's
comic
mean,
and the
we're like,
characters and
don't do that.
everything.
Yeah.
And
I'll
it's
get
nice to
them.
know that we're not doing anything that's like, making you go, oh.
Yeah.
No, not at all. I think the one thing I saw like was when people were discussing, I think there was a comment section when it came to now talking to Inoue, like when he got back from Hokkaido. And I did do a little bit of an awkward chop there with cliffhanger where she is saying like, oh, my uncle, no, not my uncle, my grandfather died like some time ago. Which could be perceived as pretty insensitive. But then I saw that became a whole debate about like, is it okay to criticize her or not? Because there's so much, unfortunately, there's so many people that hate on girl characters just because they are girls, and that is a problem in the BL community. At the same time, and I think it's really cool that people are kind of speaking up about it, because Amanda has had the opposite experience where she has introduced a girl character and people have been absolutely like tearing her down and being like, break her fingers or something, which is very like, oh, whoa, calm down. At the same time, I think I also want to say it's okay to dislike like you shouldn't dislike a character just because she's a girl, but it is okay to dislike her for other reasons, even if she is a girl. Like this kind of balance where like just it's fine to criticize a character as long as you don't take it too far or make it about gender or sex.
I'm gonna say that I was pissed off with those comments on that chapter because I thought most of them were unfair, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sandy?
Yep. Okay. So, and Mary's already brought this up once, that you have hinted that the fandoms affected your decision in terms of bringing in a side couple. We're wondering, has the fandom influenced the story in any other way?
Like there have been a few times. The thing is like because I usually have a buffer, like usually I try to have a buffer of at least like 3 weeks or something. And that's kind of a minimum for me. But the thing is like sometimes when people write, oh, I hope this happens, then it's difficult for me to kind of accommodate that even if I wanted to. If it's like, oh, I hope this happens next week because that episode is already drawn. But there have been times where like people have just, there was one time, for example, someone commented on Webtoon like, oh, it would be so cute if now at one point stood up for Sota when someone calls him Genki. And I thought like, yeah, that would be cool. That would be kind of cute. And that's something that I did when he, when Nao kind of picked a fight with Takeo. But then I kind of twisted it a little bit. So it's not just that Nao sticking up for Sota, but it's also like him getting his aggression out because of his grief with his mother. But that was like a scene that I came up with based on that one comment. And I think the bus scene where he sleeps on his shoulder, that's something I've already mentioned that people were so disappointed that it didn't happen on the way to school, like to the like summer camp. Yeah, but that's like when it's enough time. And also like where I was influenced, that was of course also with the backstory of Now, that when people said this goes on for too long and it's depressing, and that is when I was seriously considering just shortening it down and maybe not uploading everything. Because and that's the trouble also when you release a webcomic where it's on a weekly basis, because I think it is easier when you read it in one go rather than when you have to wait every week for progression. And I tried to listen to the community, and I proposed the change, but then when so many people said no, we want to read the whole thing, then that influenced me too, to just leave it as it is.
Yeah. So we have 2 more questions from the pre-planned ones, and then we're going to get into the chat questions. Okay. You said that in the beginning about not safe for parts of the comic, and you said you're still considering this. How do you feel about contents, like not safe for contents created by the community, and how do you feel about making it come true in the story?
I think it's really cool. I'm all for it. I think like when it comes to fandom and exploring those topics, it's just a part of it. Isn't there like rule, I don't know which number, where it says like if it's online, there's gonna be porn for it. um, and I think that's very true. And why should my comic be an exception for that? And that's the rule. Like either you're into it and you want to read it, or you don't, and then you just don't read it. And for me, drawing it, I've never drawn it before, so I'm not sure how I will feel about it necessarily, not negatively, but it's just going to be a very interesting experience for me, both as an artist, but also like getting into that topic. And for me, I'm not going to draw it that much, I think, because I'm mostly interested in it in terms of plot, in terms of, you know, for so many people, like I know not everyone is intimate with their partners, can be for different reasons. But when you are intimate for those people, then it's usually a very important part of the relationship. And I think that if we're following these characters, especially if it's like a coming of age story, then that makes sense to me to explore. But not just in a like, oh, this is such a sexy thing kind of way, but actually just kind of these awkward teenagers kind of figuring things out. So yeah, no, it's gonna be interesting. And I wanna include it. I'm not sure how much I'm gonna draw it, but I want to draw it at certain points where, yeah, it makes sense and where it doesn't just feel repetitive. Because I know there are like some artists that they make a whole lot of NSFW on their Patreon and they have a lot of fun with it, and that's really great. But some of them also make it where it's just about, you know, the sexual thing, which is fine. I don't necessarily mind it or anything, but I don't think that I would be able to portray that convincingly necessarily unless there is something emotional to be gained from it. Yeah.
And I remember that chart you responded like I think it's the meet my couple in 5 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
You put their horny levels very high, and I was like, yeah, that like of course not everyone is like that, but many teenage boys are like that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it makes sense. Realistically, it makes sense. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
So we're going to the last question, okay? From the pre-planned ones, but then we're going to have some from the chat. So if you want to start asking there, people, you can, okay? We're monitoring it.
Okay, so I'll go ahead with the last question here. Recently, you've promoted the fandom communities on Band Discord, as well as the newly formed Idiots Don't Catch Cold Fan Fiction Challenge, which me and Mary hold on AO3. Not many authors would take the time to acknowledge those kind of fan background projects, and we're wondering, like, how do you feel about being in contact with the fandom like this, to the point where we could say, hey, we want to do a live Q&A, and you're like, okay.
No, I think it's absolutely amazing, and I feel very honored, honestly, because I don't feel like I think this is what a lot of authors would actually dream of, because this is where you don't just your comic doesn't exist in a void, because so many people have these stories in their heads and so on. And one of the most rewarding experience for me, which makes it all worth it, you know, sitting down and putting it to paper, because of course it's the most fun when I can just imagine my characters doing things and I don't have to put any work into it. But like when there's a community, it's just like, oh, these characters are not just in my head. I'm getting to share them with other people who are as invested in them as I am. And I think like this is kind of, and I think like when you have a number on the screen where you see like, oh, so and so many people are subscribed to you, I think it's just kind of difficult to visualize it, because it's just in your everyday life, it doesn't seem to change much. It changes a lot, but I mean, you know, it's just, I think that when you have comments, when you have Discord, when you have this, then you actually feel like, oh, there's someone behind that number. It's not just this abstract thing. There are people actually invested in where this is, yeah. And I think that's really me to do this for a living. And I don't think that I would have explored my characters in this way if I didn't have time to put it onto paper, because it's just such a big difference also having it in your head and actually writing it. There are so many parts of the story that I only come up with as I am writing the actual dialogue and have to decide on something. So thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you too, and it's so nice to have an author that we really admire, that makes a story that's so important to us, that's so available, to talk, to be present in the community. I think it really means a lot too, because we also can see the person behind the story, and
Mm,
I think it gets more interesting to know like how you create it, how you think about it, what you wanna show in the story to share with
yeah.
us, So I think it's like a two-way. How do you say it in English, Sandy?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was paying too much attention to the chat.
Yeah, like it's really an exchange, like
Yeah.
we gain and
Oh,
you gain
collaborate
too.
and stuff.
So
Is that what you
yeah,
mean?
yeah, like it's a win-win, really.
Yeah. It's like a
The thing is
two-way
that,
street. It's yeah.
yeah, two-way
I
street. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you think that way because sometimes I feel guilty about not being more active, like writing, like because in the past I would answer, like reply to more comments and so on. And I really want to be able to do that and show more appreciation for the fan art, for the fan fiction. But it's honestly just mostly that I try not to type too much on my laptop when I'm not working, just because it is, I have to save up that for when I actually am working. But I want you guys to know I always read every comment on whether it's Tapas, Webtoon, or Patreon. I can decide my own working hours, um, and I usually work like I am 8 hours a day at the office, sometimes longer, sometimes less. But Friday mornings, I usually like take some time where I am a bit longer in bed just to read comments and see
Yeah,
what you guys are saying. So I see it, I appreciate it. It's just that it's a bit difficult for me to write as much as I would like to.
yeah. There are people here really wanting to know if you read fan fiction. If you
Oh, not
like,
that. How much? How much is the
how
question?
much?
How much fan
Yeah.
fiction do you read?
I do read. I have to admit, it's sometimes difficult for me to keep up with how much.
Mhm.
Thanks to you guys again, that you're like have this challenge where like set up this challenge where people are posting every month. So in the past, I would read everything that came out, and now I'm kind of saving it up, or like especially when I go on vacation. Like in my everyday life, I have a hard time sometimes to sit down to just read because I guess there's just some underlying stress as well.
Yeah.
But for example, in January, I did take some time off, and I was cycling outdoors, and that is where I would actually take out my phone and actually read, which was so nice. But I kind of need to have like not too many distractions around me to do so. And when I
Yeah.
do, it's so lovely. Um, and some like yeah, I do lurk and see what's up there. I don't know how to say how much I read. It's like I can't really say how many hours in a week or a month, but
Uh,
I do try to keep up somewhat.
hmm And don't feel pressured. I think you are like the most active author I know,
Oh,
and we know it's possible to do everything to everybody. It's impossible for anyone. But I really appreciate the like the support you give to the community. So don't feel pressured at all. Just do what you can. It's fine.
yeah,
Sorry, I
thank
think
you.
you're
I'm glad.
cutting out there, Mary. Or you are for me.
Uh,
Maybe
Yeah, a
nobody
little
else.
bit for me too. I think I got what you said, but yeah, internet is
yeah, no,
might
just
be.
saying you. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, now it's
Yeah.
better. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And just saying that you shouldn't be pressure because it's all good. Like we appreciate your um your support in the community too. So hear me?
It's
Your
gotten a
face
bit
is
worse again. I
like,
like with Wi-Fi
oh my
maybe.
god.
Like I don't know. Now it's not like whenever you say, "Can you hear me?" Then it sounds
Yeah, then it's
perfect.
fine. Okay, why don't we move on to the next
Uh,
question?
yeah, okay. So actually the next question, please tell me you can hear you okay. Is from the chat. Okay.
Next question from the chat. Okay.
Yeah. Um, okay, let me see here. Yeah, my Wi-Fi looks fine. I don't know what's happening,
I know
but
it's better again.
Do you
okay,
want me
let's
to do
try
you want
it.
me to write the or read the next question?
Um, okay, you can do it. No problem.
Okay. All right. What made you
Have you
want to
seen which
write?
ones?
Oh, Okay, I'm just gonna
Sorry,
start with this
because
one, and then
you
you
had
can send me
selected
the ones that
here.
you want. Okay. Um.
Okay, I'm so gonna send the selected ones.
Okay. What made you want to write a boy love specifically?
Um, I think that, well, first of all, I think it was mostly because I read so much shonen growing up, and I think the most interesting dynamics were the ones between the main character and his rival slash best friend. And especially when it comes to rival to friends to enemies stories, and when it's a modern day setting in the normal world and not a magical one, then I think that having two characters that are the same gender and sex is interesting because when there's a rivalry, I think there's even more areas when there can be rivals at. Um, like for example, like if that was, for example, a girl and a boy, then they could of course compete in things such as, you know, school grades or something. But if it's like for now two boys, as it did with Sota and now, then there are other insecurities that can get into like can that matter. Like for example, that Sota will compare himself to now and just how popular he is with the girls and so on. Meanwhile, if it was like, for example, a girl, then maybe she wouldn't necessarily compare her looks to his unless she was romantically interested. But with Sota, it would be like, oh gosh, he is better at me, not just when it comes to grades, but like also in sports and so on. And that is, for example, something where most of the time doesn't always have to be, but biologically men usually have the advantage in terms of physical strength and speed and everything. um, and yeah, and again, when it comes to a rival story, I think that having more areas to compete in makes it a bit more interesting.
Can definitely see that. Okay. Next question from the chat is, what do you imagine Soda and Now's voice would be? Do you have a fan cast for the voice actor if you were able to choose one?
Oh, that's difficult. I think there was actually a voice the other day that I thought of where I'm like, oh, that would actually sound very good for Sota, and that was an English voice. I can't remember what it was though. So I don't feel like I'm up to speed when it comes to Japanese voice actors. So I think I would have to think about it a bit more and maybe come back to it on social media or something.
Sounds
But how
good.
do you imagine their voice being?
Um, I think that Nao's would be just a bit lower than Sota's.
Mm-hmm.
And a bit more smooth and so on. And Sota, of course, has to be very energetic, and the voice actor would have to be able to have like those more higher pitched screams when he is like extremely frustrated or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, uh, yeah, I think that's like kind of what I have in mind. But
Uh-huh.
difficult to say. Like I can't imitate them myself.
Yeah, no problem. I always wondered that because I don't know, when you see so much of the character, you start like there's something missing here. How would their voices be? Like I really
Yeah,
want to
and
imagine how they're saying it.
that's interesting. I think when I like, if would people be more interested in like, okay, what would their English or Japanese voices sound like? I guess Japanese makes most sense since they're in Japan,
Yeah,
but
Japanese. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Or yeah, I'm gonna look. I remember I liked the Japanese voice actor of Roxas in Kingdom Hearts. And I thought like I remember thinking, oh, that would be a good Sota voice. But
Uh-huh.
it's been a while. I'm not sure if I can still stand by that.
Yeah,
I
okay.
don't remember what his voice sounds like, but I remember having that thought when I was looking at some Kingdom Hearts clips.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'll have to
yeah,
check that. I don't know it, but
yeah.
I'll check it definitely. So someone asked, how do you achieve such a clean line when you draw? Because it looks very perfect, almost velvet-like.
Thank you. Well, first of all, my sketches are pretty clean, are very clean. Like sometimes when I show it to people, they are like, "Why don't you just make this black and upload it?" But I can't. I think I'm a little bit of a perfectionist in that sense. And what really helps me along is that Clip Studio has this, what's the tool called? A subtool figure, and they have like curve lines, and that's something that I use where you can get that perfect line, and no matter how much of it's like this or this, and you have perfect control over it. And that's what I use when I go over my already very refined sketches.
Uh-huh.
Um, that's something maybe that I could try and record and show if people are interested.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, some people might see that as a bit of a sin in the artist community, because people would like, no, would you have to have like, you know, this natural with the hand flick where you get like the thicker line at the top and so on. And I do sometimes do that. Sometimes it's just faster to work that way, especially when it comes to Sota's hair. But especially when there's like close-ups, when it's and I really want to have that specific curve for his cheek, then it's just it just makes it so much faster, and it helps the perfectionist in me get achieving that.
Yeah. But it would be nice to see like a speed up video like of you drawing it, because even your sketches are really really clean. It's impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, those are like not the initial sketches. First sketches are very rough, and then I just kind of do sketch after sketch until I get to a point where I'm like, yeah, this looks good.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of a messy process, but I'll see if I can record something that I'm not ashamed of sharing.
Okay, no problem. So we are going to go to the last question of the chat, okay? I don't know if you're able to answer that, but I'm going to ask anyway. Can you tell us which song we are on of the playlist? Like,
Let me see. I'm gonna open the playlist and just see where we could be at.
I wanted to ask a kind of a side question to that one too.
Yeah.
With the songs, are they like, I think before you've said that they're in order, but like, are they grouped together? So like multiple songs are kind of happening at the same time?
Yeah, like partially. Like some songs are very like direct. Like for example, I think the Couldn't Have Said It by Julia Michaels is very directly linked to the chapter where they are arguing. Like when they are, Sota is saying like, no wonder you don't have any friends, and now cuts him back. We're like, oh well, you can't hurt me, whatever. You're not my, like, I don't care what you say. And like that is very specifically that one song. But right now, I think it's difficult to pinpoint, because right now I would say we are around like, wait, where are we? Because I'm thinking about what I'm writing right now. But I think we are getting
like
to,
right before we'll get to know if Sota sings well or not.
I think we're kind of at ceilings and entering, and what can I do? And I think like also, I'm not sure where to place Mr. Porcelain, like because that one is, the beginning fits very well, but then the ending part feels more like either that could be a daydream or that would fit a later part of the story. So sometimes I have a hard time placing them, and then I will shift it around if I'm like, okay, maybe this makes more sense. But yeah, I think ceilings and what can I do is pretty fitting for what we're
So
going to
I think
Heather
that
is coming out, yeah. Like it hasn't been, we haven't been reached Heather yet.
We're getting there.
Oh,
I think,
see,
you know, actually,
we thought we were past it.
no, I think maybe we are kind of like, now that you say that, yeah, no, that's also, yeah, no, that's also kind of where we are at. That's the thing, like they're kind of clumped together.
Ongoing,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and I think that,
because this, no, sorry, go on.
no, I was just saying, like these songs that I've mentioned, I feel like they are gonna be like an ongoing theme in this arc as well, as well as distance, kind of gonna become more relevant. I think distance comes more relevant after amusement park. Did I have amusement park as a keyword?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Yes, you
Okay,
did.
good.
It
I was
is.
like,
Did I give that away?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. No, but I think like, yeah, I
Okay.
think from like, I think the songs from Mr. Porcelain to Heather are kind of what's gonna be more relevant before the amusement park. Yeah.
Do you listen to them while drawing or playing the story?
Sometimes I listen to them more when I'm on the move, when I'm like on the subway or taking a walk, and that's where, and it also helps me getting inspired for certain scenes. But when I draw, it depends. It depends on if I am, what mood I'm in. But mostly when I draw, I will listen to something completely unrelated, because I like, yeah. Otherwise, I can get a bit bored. Like if I thumbnail, for example, then maybe it would be nice to have. No, but even then, I wouldn't listen to this playlist, because when I write and thumbnail, I have to have something that really works as background music, where I don't focus on what is being sung necessarily. And when I have that part done and I'm just doing drawing, then that's just such an automatic thing I do, and that's when I kind of want to get like I don't know, Dr. Phil or something else that
Yeah,
just distracts me and just entertains me. Yeah.
yeah.
But car rides or something like that is very great for this playlist.
Mm, nice. Yeah, it's the playlist is something that we all also often theorize about. So
Yeah.
so many people were wondering about that. But okay, so now we have to close like the chat questions, okay, because of the time.
Yeah, we know
But
that
we
there's
still
time.
have two other things to do here. We have a surprise for you, I know.
Okay.
She looks worried.
I didn't
That's
know
nice
this.
because that's the face we make when we went and reading. Oh my God, one of your episodes.
Yeah, like when we see the new title, that's the face we make where it's like, okay.
Oh, you're like, this is revenge, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Good.
Okay, so go, Sandy.
All right. So, as we kind of mentioned before, there's a lot of people in the fandom who feel that idiots don't catch cold has really had like an impact on their life. So we actually asked for a few testimonials, and I'm going to read them out to you here.
Oh, oh my gosh. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so sweet.
I'm just going to wait for because we are a little bit ahead of where the live is or the stream is. So if we can, Victoria, if you can just tell me when you've switched screen, I'll start reading the first one. Okay, awesome. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Um, so the first one starts off here. I don't have a big story about how IDCC changed my life. I can't even remember how it started. It was another webtoon between all the ones I read. I don't have a grand story of how it all started. It was small, but it piqued my interest and in the end grew on me. The story itself is fantastic, and the art makes everything better. It even made me pay for it, although I had once decided never to pay for a webtoon. It might sound simple, but I love the story of those two idiots, and I'm sure I'm not alone. Let me change that. I know I'm not alone because through it, I found an amazing community where we have a place to discuss and talk about IDCC and enjoy the story together. I always wish to have a place like that. Comment sections aren't enough, and here we are. Thank you for everything, Pika.
Oh my gosh, that's so sweet. Oh, that made me so emotional.
There's more.
Thank you so much. Oh, more.
Okay,
Wow.
on to the next one here. I'm going to go ahead and start. Still unaware of the impact it would have on me, I started reading IDCC back in 2020 because the summary sounded appealing and the first chapter promised a fun story. Now here I am, 4 years later, agonizing over how I could even begin to describe what IDCC means to me. As I think and think, I am reminded of everything IDCC has given me. Beautifully complex characters, and one of my favorite main characters of all time, a rich story, the loveliest community I could ever have asked for, and my love for writing. You have created something truly incredible, Aina. But
Oh,
I feel these words still aren't enough, so I will leave you with this, hoping you understand what I mean. Finding IDCC was a homecoming. Thank you for bringing me home. With lots of love, bruh.
oh my gosh. Thank you, bro. That's so, so sweet. Oh, that last line, that's so poetic too. That should like that's that should be used in a story. Oh, thank you so much. That means so much to me.
All right, on to the next one.
Oh,
Aina, I don't think I could ever properly convey what you and your comment have done for me. I've been reading your comics since I was in since my seventh grade year. And as I find myself reaching my second year of college, I can't help but acknowledge one of the reasons I've been able to make it so far. When I first found your comic, I was enamored. I instantly fell in love with your story. I found myself inspired by the way you convey emotions and tell a narrative. I found myself, oh, sorry, lost my spot there. At the time, I had been taking an art class in my middle school for required credit. And yet, when I continued to read your monthly updates, I couldn't help but want to draw outside of my class. So I picked up my pen and began to draw. Before I knew it, I had completed a sketchbook in my free time. I found myself feeling lighter. If I had a bad day and began to crawl deeper into myself, I'd remind myself that idiots don't catch colds with updates. Even when I went through the most horrific moment of my life, I'd found comfort in Now's grief. When I needed to smile, I'd find laughter in Soda's kind nature. Fast forward to now, I'm going to be attending an art school next fall to study 2D design and animation. You have been one of my biggest inspirations through thick and thin, and your story has impacted me to my core. I hope you continue to pursue what you love and convey your incredible sense of storytelling. Thank you for sharing Idiots Don't Catch Colds with the world. I will continue to support anything you create in the future. Best wishes, Swedish.
Thank you so much, Swedish. Oh, that's so crazy to think that you started in, what was it, seventh grade, and now in college. It's so, that's so, I'm so happy that you're still, like, because that's also a difference in age, right? Where you grow up and that you still like my comic, and that means so much also when people say that It Is Don't Catch Colds has somehow helped them through a very difficult time. Like that's honestly one of the absolute best compliments I think any author can get. Like, oh, and I recognize these usernames because like, yeah, I know you're active in the community, and it feels like kind of like a friend saying these things. Like I'm recognizing like a name as though I would recognize a face. Thank you so much, and and also, Sweet, your art is so amazing. So I think you'll be such an asset to the industry in the future. Whatever you make, I'm sure it's just gonna be anything you touch becomes gold.
I'm sure she's crying right now.
Oh, probably.
I feel like I'm crying. It's like I don't usually get this. Like I mean, I get emotional, but I'm so close to.
We have more, okay?
Yeah, I believe we still have one more, right? I'm just wanting confirmation here that it's switched over. Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right. I started reading IDCC back in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. And in the beginning, it was just another comic to take my mind away from my thoughts. Little did I know that I would love this comic so much that I would immediately reread it, recommend it to all my friends, and that almost 4 years later, I would still be as obsessed as I used to be, and having the opportunity to help bring this Q&A project to life. Not only that, I would even make friends because of this amazing comic. I'm so grateful to have found IDCC back, and I love this story with all my heart. It remains undefeated as my favorite webcomic, and that's because of the amazing job Aina has done over the years. I'm so happy that I get to read Soda and Now's story. This is from Victoria, or SO.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
We're going to
it's
send you
like
written copies of this stuff too, just so you know.
please,
Yeah.
yes, please do. Like I want to put it on my wall or something. Again, like this is so. It's also having it read out loud is such an experience because I mean, of course, just reading these things means so much, but I feel like having someone from the community read it out loud, that kind of puts a different dimension on it where it feels more real. And the thing is, I work so much. For the longest time, I've been working at the story, like in my room, like in the beginning, like in my childhood room at my parents' house, and then when I moved to Japan, like in my share house, and my now I work in an office, but I think like for most time it's such a solitary work where it's you and the comic, and then you throw it out there hoping someone will read it. And this is really beyond anything that I had anticipated when I started posting it. I thought, I hope it makes someone laugh when I posted it. And as someone who, of course, everyone has those days that are difficult. And I think that like for me, when it comes to my story, it doesn't have to be remembered forever, in the sense of becoming one of the great stories that people read hundreds of years from now. And that doesn't even matter to me, as long as if I can make someone feel better one evening or one day when they're otherwise would be feeling really, really bad, and that's already made everything so worth it. Because I've also had those stories growing up, and when I would feel lonely, and I wouldn't have expected to create something that would make people feel maybe close to how I felt back then when I read my favorite stories. So that means so, so much. Thank you so much for putting it together.
Me and Sandy would also like to say some words live. We haven't written, but Sandy, you want to start?
Yeah, you want me to start? Okay. So I started reading Idiots Don't Catch Cold. I read it right around when the pandemic started myself. I think it started in December 2019. But yeah, it definitely helped give me something to distract myself. Here, I live in Canada, and I work for CRA, and when COVID hit, we were tasked with getting the money to everybody who lost their job. So it was a pretty hectic time, and I couldn't kind of get away from what was happening in the world, because with every phone call I took, because I was still on the phones then, it was about COVID. So it definitely really did help me find a way to escape from what was everything that was happening at the moment. And then I forget when I wrote my first fan fiction, but when I was younger, when I was in high school, I wrote a novel, tried to get somewhere with writing, but it doesn't pay the bills unless you really, really push it. And I have 2 young kids. They're not young anymore, but I did. So it wasn't really an option for me to be able to try and juggle making a career out of it at the time. But since reading your comic, I have started writing again. And it is just, to me, it's been amazing because, one, people are reading my stuff and really enjoying it. And two, it gives me a way to kind of express myself as well, and put use to what I know is a good talent of mine. And so I don't care if I'm not writing about my characters as much as I could come up with my own characters. I'm just happy to kind of expand on your story, stay somewhat true to your characters when I can be, and maybe push the boundaries other times. But it really has changed my life. It's kind of become most of my life, as weird as that sounds. But I really, really do appreciate all the effort that you've put in. I can really tell how much effort you put into your story, and the fact that you really are trying to get not just a story about these 2 people, but you're trying to show a positive relationship and how things can be, right? And that's something that we really need in the world nowadays. I think when it comes to relationships, is we need that example of a positive relationship, of people going through this same stuff, but actually being able to work on it. So I think you really have provided that for us, especially when we needed it the most because of that stupid pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you for writing those fan fictions. I've already written to you. I haven't been able to catch up with the latest update. I started reading some of it, but the past few days have been a bit hectic. But honestly, one of my biggest accomplishments as an author is just having these stories, fan fictions of my work, up on AO3 or anywhere really, because that's I would be the one reading those fan fictions and just wolfing them down. And I think it's just so cool. And you're such a talented writer, and I think that's so cool that you've picked it up again, inspired by the story, but also just because what you write is always so, so good. And I always look forward to reading more of that. Yeah, and also now that you're getting into spicy stuff, for me, it's also, I'm taking note. I'm how does she do it? Because I'm not exactly sure yet what I'm going to do. So I'm keeping an eye open for those parts as well.
I'm trying to avoid people asking me how I do it.
The latest one is really good.
I don't know if I can explain how I do it. So
yeah.
Well, I'm paying attention. So thank you. That means that it really means the world.
I don't think I'll be able to say everything I want to because I'll be talking a lot. And I get a bit emotional too thinking about the comic, but I also I'm a newbie if you think about it. As I said, I've been reading for 2 years now, and the comic is I think 7 years or eight this year. I don't something like that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, 7 years, I believe. Yeah,
Yeah,
be 7, 8 years. Started 2017. I'm bad at math. Like Sultan.
yeah. So but I also started at a I mean pandemic was really a difficult time for everyone, but I was working at a hospital and it was a main hospital, COVID hospital here where I live, and I had a really bad burnout back then. Um, and I stopped working there after a while, and then I started reading IDCC, but I was still very like mentally ill. Um, and then I went through the hardest period of my life that I had to have a surgery on my spine. I stopped walking and it was really, really, really difficult. And I remember being at the hospital the day before my surgery and reading IDCC. And it was the only thing that kept me more grounded, you know? And it was really important for me. Both the parts where now is grieving because yeah, and I went through a grieving period too. But also so like all of them really, I relate to both of them so much. Um, I already told you like the 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 parts that Sota struggles with school too, and how he gets emotional because he sees how he can, how much he can do. You know, even though he was never taught to believe in himself, and then there comes this one person who says no you can, and he starts believing in himself, and that really gets to me. So yeah, I'm really grateful for all of it, and I also started writing again. I had also stopped for many years, and I remember when I joined band after I started reading it. I was dying. I was with. I had so many ideas for the fanfiction. I could for the story. I could only think about it, and I saw Sandy's fanfictions there too. We didn't even know each other back then, and I don't know. I just got so inspired, and I started writing. And I started writing in another language. I had never written in English, so it was very challenging. But I feel so proud of being able to do it now, you know, for achieving all of that now and being here with you, knowing that we still have so many wonderful things to look forward to, even when they're sad and when we get a bit mad with you and the characters. But it's like it's a love. It all comes from a place of love, really. So I feel everything the comic gives me is so positive, you know, and I really it really, really, really made an impact in my life. I think a lot of things would have gone differently if I hadn't started reading DCC. So just thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and just so you know,
Yeah,
when
I'm
she
trying
says
not
like
to
we didn't
cry
know
here.
each other, like you brought us together. We're like we talk
Yeah,
every day now.
yeah. You gave
So
me so
that's
many friends.
And she's like she's like 4 hours ahead of me or something ridiculous. Like anyway,
Yeah, and we talk every day in Vitória too, like Swedish. We have made so many good friends in the fandom.
yeah.
that's so amazing. That makes me so happy. Oh my gosh. And I love also whatever you write. It's like it's also just amazing. So I like you both start writing again. That's so cool. And then
Yeah,
for me, I'm just reaping all the benefits because it just it also gives me sometimes also ideas. Actually, I should have mentioned that before as an inspiration. Reading the fan fiction, it's not always like them. It just makes me think about so many different scenarios that could happen. I'm so sorry you went through that very difficult time where you were in the hospital and everything. But again, that makes me feel so honored that out of all the comics, mine helped you in any way feel a bit better. And I'm
yeah,
so happy you're sharing this with me. And that just, it's such a different experience actually hearing that, especially from a real person, or
Yeah.
I mean, I know people are real even if they're online, but it really is very different hearing that kind of in
Yeah.
person, even if it's still online.
There is
Yeah.
one thing, I know I've said it to you before, but I kind of want to say it again, that, I enjoy your story so much that when I found out that my daughter was reading BLs, I forced her to read it. I did. But she reads it now. She has her own Patreon and everything. And I just wanted to say that I wanted to put that out there because I feel that it's something that you can share. She's 13 now. So I feel it's something you can share with like the younger generation. The people on Discord, the age range is so wide.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel a little bit old. But
Same
like
at this point.
right? But it shows how many people you've touched. Generations of people.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that's so cool. And honestly, like whenever someone says that they are uh, on the older side, that sounds so wrong. But for me, like I mostly expected people. Because I started writing this when I was in my early 20s, and like this being a school story, I thought, okay, probably most people who read this are still in school. But then later on, I think that when it was the arc with Sota, like Sota having his insecurity in school, uh, and now building him up, like you described, Nari, saying like, no, you can do this. It was so interesting to me that there were so many people in the comment sections that are like, yeah, I'm a teacher, and I agree with the statement and something. And
Yeah.
I think so, for me also, I'm like, teachers are reading this, like adults, that's so cool. And for me, I think that this, I mean, I'm glad for anyone who reads this, but anyone who is outside of the range that I expected people to read makes me a bit extra happy. And especially now that I myself, I'm 31 at this point. And I feel like I am delving more into like, I have a bit of a different perspective, I hope so, than I had as like 22 or 23, however old I was. And I just love that there are like a bigger range of people with different experiences reading this, and that it's not so contained to just one specific group. That makes me so happy, and I think you're such a cool mom that you just
I hear that
get
all
to
the
pay
time.
for your daughter.
Sweeney's just like, you're my adopted mother.
Maybe she's lurking here. We don't know. If she is, hi.
No, she is. I know she
Hello.
is. She keeps commenting.
Okay, well, hello to you.
Um,
Thank you for reading.
okay, unfortunately, we couldn't collect everyone's testimonials, but we are sure that all the words shared here are felt by so many people. So it's really from all the community for you.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm very grateful, and I'm definitely gonna read also. I've been trying not to read too much the chat while talking, so I don't get
Yeah.
distracted, because I already know that I ramble
Yeah.
a lot. But I'm definitely gonna check it out after the live stream and just kind of see what people have been writing and
So
catching
we
up with
have,
that.
yeah, sure. So we have one final moment with Sandy
Mhm.
again. It's a little game we're going to play.
All right.
Yeah, we just want to have a quick Q&A. So I'm going to just say out a phrase, and then if you could give us back like one word, quick
Or
answer.
expression. Yeah.
Yeah, and
To
we'll just have a
complete
bit of
it.
fun with that. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So Aina, being an artist is
Exciting.
a dream of mine is
To continue to be successful even with my next story.
now and soda are.
Getting somewhere.
I like that one. These past 6 or 7 years of Idiots Don't Catch Colds has been
Rewarding.
a memorable landmark of the comic was
First fan fiction.
okay. And I'd like to
There's
say,
one last one. You forgot about the last one, Sandy.
no, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Okay, sorry. I thought it
I'd
was
like to say to
finished.
the fandom,
Thank you so much, but that's the main one.
Yeah.
awesome. All right.
Oh,
Well, I think
it
we've
feels so
kept
sad to be
everybody.
ending.
Yeah, I think we've been on here quite some time.
Yeah, 3 hours almost.
Sure,
But
it's
it
just
has
not that
been
bad.
so much fun. I don't even know if I have something else to say because I'm very emotional right now. But just
I
thank
guess
you
I
again,
should,
Anna.
yeah, thank you. And I should add also, not just like thank you, because there's so much I would want to say. I'm going to try like keep being creative, keep creating. Um, and yeah, I wouldn't be where I am right now without you. I remember walking by the river, like while I was making my comic, but feeling quite lost. And I was on the phone with my dad, just like, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. That I thought I was gonna get into publishing, but it seems so difficult, and I'm not sure what I'm even good at. Like, what kind of work could I do? Like, the only thing that to me made sense was kind of like what I really loved to do was comics. But at that point, I wasn't really, I didn't have as big of an audience. Like Webtoon, what you could make off of ads or the bonus program fluctuated a lot. Um, and I just remember being quite lost in my early 20s when it came to that. And at that point, if someone would have told me where I'd be at in a few years after that, thanks to really all of you, that's like, as I said, it can be quite scary to be an independent artist because you just never know. Like, there's no guarantee that people are just gonna keep liking what you do. Like, I'm so dependent on people enjoying the story. Um, but I feel honestly, and this is such a privileged position to be in because I know so many artists are struggling, being freelance and everything. And I feel so privileged because right now, at least, I feel like I am at a good place where I just have so many awesome readers that help me create the story. Like, it's, if I didn't have you guys, then I wouldn't have be able to spend as much time as I do working on this comic. So really, I think like it's part of the credit goes to you. You're the ones that are able to that keep it going. Anyway, so thank you. That's a long answer, but yeah.
That's great. It's a really amazing community, and you're part of it too, obviously. You brought it together. So, yeah, I think thank you is a really nice way to summarize everything.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, thank you.
So, guys, we're going to be ending here, okay? Because of the time, we passed a lot of what we had planned. But thank you so much for everyone who's here with us too. For those who are watching it after this, like not live, after we have already released for the general audience. Thank you too. Like all, I think all the words we said here goes for everyone in the community, really. And yeah, I think that's it. Bye bye,
Yeah.
people.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thanks for
everyone. Thank
tuning
you,
in,
Mari,
guys.
Sandy, and Victoria for setting it up, and everyone who's watching, who's been watching. All right.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.